Hello and welcome to the Arkin Brothers Talk About Movies. I'm Matthew Arkin. My brother here is Anthony Arkin, and this week we are talking about 1988's Vampire's Kiss, starring some people: Nicolas Cage, Maria Conchita Alonso, Jennifer Beals, Elizabeth Ashley. It's a crazy ride, and I'm a little worried that there may be a clash of Titans here between me and my brother. So enjoy the show.
Talking about cocktails that are stylish, movies great or phony, and how Tony should win a Matthew, and Matthew should win a Tony. But in the meantime, talking about film in the meantime. The Arkin Brothers talk about movies.
Just like dinner at home now. Everybody gang up on Matthew.
I need to talk about it. I need to figure it out.
Okay, a little clip from last week's shenanigans.
We're as surprised as everybody else is with that.
Every time. How's your week? How you doing? It's good to see you.
Good to see you. Good to see you too. I like your vampire teeth.
Yes, I'm getting my head is getting bitten by a giant vampire.
For listeners at home on the podcast, Matthew looks like his head is being gripped in the teeth of a giant, monstrous vampire. It's very believable. Almost as believable as some of the effects in the movie.
Yes, there you go.
How are you? I'm fine. Much the same. I'm good. How are things in the world of libations?
Libations. Not much going on this week. You know, the holiday week. The last week was the first day of school at the college. I was getting ready for my first classes, which is I'm always anxious.
You were nervous. How they everything go okay?
It went very well. Good group of students. I think we're going to have some fun this semester. I desperately hope we're going to have fun this semester.
Well, as long as the grades come out, and who cares, really? Is fun? I mean, is fun a part of life anymore, really? I don't know. I'm asking. No. I'm literally asking.
You know what's fun? Being done with the day, getting into bed, closing my eyes, going to sleep. That's what I look forward to every morning when I get up.
Saddest thing I've ever heard in my life. Don't go around saying that kind of thing.
You watching anything interesting? I mean, aside from this movie?
Well, I am, like I was talking to Sophia before about the show. I am one episode from finishing Paper Girls. I'm terrible at binging shows. I really feel like I should have gotten through this already because I'm a big fan of the show, as it turns out. Like I have to
like bite you or something.
It's just kind of silly that I have to sit here and apologize for my fandom, being as that this feels like I'm just celebrating our own producers, which I really am. But it's as much of a surprise to me as it is to anybody that our producers are as talented in as many ways as they are. So there it is. The show is great. I've recommended it to a few people, including my producer and producing partner, Michael, who I worked on my movie with, and he's in love with the show, and Dad loves the show, and I've just been enjoying the heck out of it. Yeah. Other than that, I've seen a lot of old movies, like as usual.
It does raise a question in my mind, though, because our producers are so incredibly talented that I wonder what the heck they're doing spending their time with us. That's what I wonder sometimes.
Well, you could choose to look at that as a positive instead of a caustic, weird, paranoid negative, as you seem to be. I'm gonna say that this is good news. That means that talented young people don't feel they're completely wasting their time
with old folks like
with us. But who knows?
You never know.
So, did you see other good things?
No, I'm still watching, Fumberton's PI.
I want to have a serious conversation with you. All right. So now that we're doing this movie show,
yeah,
on a fairly regular basis now for a while.
Yeah. Well, this is our 95th episode, so
Might you, and I don't want to, let's not fix what's not broken, but might you think about perhaps instead of watching Fumberton's Pond,
yes.
you watch 40 minutes of some classic movie you've never seen before to round out some of the darkened corners of your cinematic interior life. What do you think?
That's what I have this show for. This show gets me to watch a movie every week
Okay.
that I wouldn't otherwise watch. You're going to add more work to that?
Point taken.
I don't
I couldn't think of a more horrible job if I wanted to. And you have to do it. You have to.
Yeah, that's how I feel sometimes at the end of the day. If somebody tells me one more thing that I have to read or watch instead of just being able to turn on the TV and turn off my mind, and I will say that on Fumberton's PI or Pond or whatever you want to call it, which this month happens to be a show called Endeavour, a British crime thriller, there is one of, I think, the best actors I've ever seen in my life. Fellow named Anton Lesser, who, if you don't know his work, check him out.
Where would I have seen him outside of Fumberton's Pond?
I'm not sure what else he's done besides he does a lot of theater in England.
You're just saying that because you assume all of Brits do a lot of theater. I would just think
no.
that's
No, Anton Lesser. What has he been on? Anton Lesser. There he is. He's an English actor, and he's just spectacular. He what is it? He was on Endeavour. He was on Wolf Hall. There you go. Which
All right.
I think is a sequel to Pemberton's Pond.
Again, this wasn't a complaint or a criticism. I was merely curious, and you've answered my question perfectly. As we said, if it's not broken, don't hammer at it.
I
So
need
is this
to
a sh-
relax. I need to relax watching mindless stuff sometimes where I don't have to think.
All right. I was more, I guess, relating to the idea that you were desperate the minute you got up in the morning to just go back to sleep, that the whole day was spent waiting for the opportunity to go back to sleep.
It is. My day is basically going through the checklist of things that I have to do before I can get back to bed.
Well, one of those things this week was watching The Vampire's Kiss.
Yes, and I did it.
Or just Vampire's Kiss. There's no
Vampire's Kiss. Yeah. It's not it's just Vampire's Kiss.
What was your relationship to this movie before you saw it?
I didn't know anything about it. I knew absolutely nothing about this movie. I don't think I'd heard of it other than people mentioning it and saying, "Oh, Vampire's Kiss," and raising both of their eyebrows, which I didn't know how to interpret.
Because none of them had the courage to tell you maybe how they actually felt.
Right.
Or one way or another.
And I'm afraid going into this episode, I'm not afraid. Maybe I'm anticipating that I'm going to learn that this is actually a work of towering genius in a way that I'm not aware of.
Okay.
Because sometimes my brother Anthony instructed me.
I'm uncomfortable with the way that you phrased that.
Opens my eyes. Sometimes he opens my eyes to things I wasn't aware of. There. Is that better?
And which let's face it, frankly, you probably wished that you had your eyes shut for.
Well, I do not wish I had my eyes shut for this movie. I guess we should tell people a little bit what it's about. Nicolas Cage plays Peter Lowe, a fellow who works in a publishing house in the foreign rights distribution arm of a old, apparently an established publishing house, and he's very full of himself, and he's in therapy, and he's a little bit he's a little bit American Psycho-ish, perhaps, and he doesn't treat women particularly well. And then he brings a woman home, and a bat flies into the house, and he is able to get rid of. Apparently, doesn't get bitten by the bat, but yes, he says shoo to the bat. He starts turning into he gets visited by a vampire in the form of Jennifer Beals, who bites him, and he starts turning into a vampire and losing his mind. And which of those things is actually happening? At first, we think it's a vampire movie, and then it turns out to be a movie about a guy losing his mind.
Yes. Okay, we're getting notes from the producers already.
Yes.
Which is, I think we should really be on top of, because as it turns out, they feel very strongly about this movie. I don't know which direction that leans, but they have a lot of research.
They have a lot of things to say.
They say, by the way, Christian Bale says he used Nick Cage's Peter Lowe character as an inspiration for his work in American Psycho.
Which I can get. I can see.
I can totally see that too. As a matter of fact, there's a direct through line to these two movies. And I would say, no doubt, Mary Harron was very aware of Vampire's Kiss when she made American Psycho several years later. Okay, so yeah, that's basically the movie in a nutshell. It sounds like you had a difficult experience. Sounds like you struggled a little with this one.
No, not at all.
Oh, okay.
No, I thoroughly enjoyed watching it, but because moment by moment I was astounded by what I was witnessing.
Is it?
Well,
I mean, it's an actor who has been just turned loose, with no guide rails, no guardrails, no guide.
Little plastic cones, maybe, but they're just suggestions.
Yeah,
that are disregarded.
And it's sort of like, whatever random choice I might make, I will if it would be really good to do this at 90%, I'm going to do it at 170% and see what happens.
Yeah. It also is, to this day, his favorite film that he's made,
which frightens me.
Not me at all. No. I think that I would also consider this my crowning achievement if I were him. And
okay,
I'm gonna swing hard for this one.
All right,
let's swing hard. I'd never seen it before. It's like a real. I'm kind of embarrassed to admit I'd never seen it. It's a movie I really should have known, and I didn't for whatever reason. I think I thought it was like a goofy comedy. I thought it was a different kind of goofy comedy than it is. I thought it was a more slapstick kind of typical late 80s kind of gag fest. And that's okay. But when they mix that with horror, I get really disappointed. I usually just get really, really upset and disappointed, and I don't find it funny. So I guess I avoided it for that reason. I've also kind of come to be a late Cage appreciator. I mean, I never disliked him, because early on in my movie-going life, he was turning out performances like in Raising Arizona. So how could I not like him? But I didn't know how I felt about the whole thing until a lot later. And say what you will.
I will say what I will.
But, it's as if he's decided that there will not be a moment like you've seen before in any given circumstance. Like, his other actors have done this for 100 years. They've come into a room saying, hello, how are you? Like a normal person for 100 years. And he says, that's boring. I've seen that. Why don't I come into the room like this? And I have a real appreciation for that now that I didn't really have before.
Okay, but for those but for those of us who think that perhaps the performance should be rooted in some sort of reality, even if that reality is, even if you're playing somebody insane, the insane person lives in their own reality. No, you're already shaking your
I'm not.
head.
I'm shaking my head in the sense that I think those rules apply for a certain kind of movie, but for what is arguably a completely deconstructionist, postmodernist meta film. No, I'm being serious. Those rules
I
are
knew I was in for this.
are really different now. Like striving for truthfulness or specific human realities in a scenario where I think what they're riffing on are you know are cartoons of reality more than an attempt to recreate it. It's like, yeah, no, it's not. You're right. Yes, that is not accurate. That it's not an accurate depiction of. That's not a photorealistic depiction of how people are. That is not an accurate depiction of human life on the planet Earth, for the most part. But that doesn't mean it doesn't have every reason to be front and center in a movie about life, and that's where I'm coming from about it.
Yeah, I agree with that if I buy that the filmmakers were consciously deciding to make that movie. But
I don't know how you could make how you really don't think they were making that movie. You really don't think that them trying to remake the Metamorphosis in 1988 was a brave and audacious thing to do and creatively challenging.
Well, I did not.
Are you right, Mr. Lowe?
Shut up, bitch.
I didn't buy that they were making a serious attempt at doing that.
Okay.
I
Did you buy that they were making an absurdist attempt at doing that though? Because I think that's more of the point. Like a serious attempt at doing it would be Nosferatu. Like a serious attempt would be something else, but a surrealist attempt at it, an absurdist attempt at it, would look very much like this. And I think that they were conscious of that. And I think this performance is unseparable from the movie. I think they knew what they had when it started, and I think that the director went, okay, let's make the movie around this approach. And it, to me, it's kind of like a weird work of genius. I hear. I'll just come out and say it. However, not one that I feel great about fighting for, because if it doesn't strike you that way, I don't see how anybody can convince you otherwise. That's all I got.
Okay. I mean, I guess if I was going to go into it and look at it that way, I could maybe go along for that ride. But I didn't feel like the other people were in the same, if that's the movie it is. I didn't feel like the other people were in that movie. I felt like Nicolas Cage was in that movie, and I didn't feel like the other people necessarily were.
I agree, and in this case, I don't think that has anything to do with it being a good or bad movie or not. See, I look at it like I think it's like going back to like 60s movies, almost like it feels like The President's Analyst almost. You know, I mean, this could be a Roger Corman movie. It could be a lot of different kinds of movies. It's a ridiculous premise.
I totally
in many
agree with you
ways.
there, but everybody in those movies was in the same movie.
No, not in Bob Downey Sr. movies. Not in Robert Downey Sr. movies. They weren't. They didn't know sometimes what was going on, and they were woken up out of a deep sleep on the side of the sidewalk and asked to be in a movie, and they did. I mean, the fact that they made this movie very cheaply and then had him running around with fake vampire teeth without permits, just scaring people in the street, touches my heart in such a way that it's like it's just old school craziness. And
I'm a vampire. Kill me. Kill me.
whatever I mean, whatever they had to do to create this insane patchwork of inspirations and things that I will admit I was not sure of how I felt about it for the first half. It really took until a certain scene for me to go, you know what? I think I may be in love with this movie. Like, I think.
Okay. For
I
those
mean,
of you listening to the podcast, we just watched the scene in which, yes, indeed, Nicolas Cage ate a real cockroach, and he did it. He
he did
actually
it
did it for the
apparently
film.
3 times. Apparently, it was this. I heard 3 takes. Maybe they didn't get to the eating part. I don't know, but he did do that, and that's not even the scene. I mean, that traditionally would actually be a scene that would make me disfavor it, because I'm not really big on murdering things for your art, which she did. But I don't really care because I just murdered one of those things like a week ago in
Yeah,
my house, so I
exactly.
can't really blame him. But I also feel like it's the kind of stunt acting that gets a lot of the attention, whereas some of the subtler stuff doesn't, which is a funny thing to say about this movie. But it was actually when there's one of the mid scenes where he confronts Alonso, Maria Conchita Alonso, and he's going really rather extremely mad, and he's got his head back and his eyes are rolled so that you see mostly whites, and he's going
Yes.
full crazy. Like, now he's like 120% Vampire Town. And I was like, they finally went far enough for me to go, I think this is the movie that I wanted to see. And I'm like, I think that they could have done things to make the first half better. I agree. I think that the Maria Conchita Alonso story is not high stakes, doesn't feel like much. But then in another way, I feel like it's kind of this fantastic comment all the way around about the ludicrousness of New York posh life in the 80s. And I
Well,
thought
that's interesting because my alternative title for the movie, I had an alternative title for the film, which is Just Another Day in New York City.
yeah. That's kind of what I felt like. I was imagining the writer, Joseph Minion, who also wrote After Hours for Scorsese, which is a great movie, and a movie that, I mean, these two films together make me feel like, oh, he's had this guy had a lot to say about New York. This was also early movies of his, so I'm thinking of him as a kind of angry, young, starving writer in New York, writing screenplays about what he's seeing and what's making him angry. Wall Street had already come out. Like, Gordon Gekko was what we were all supposed to celebrate in New York at that time.
Right.
Late 80s New York was, at least if you looked in the magazines, was the version of New York that Trump wanted you to see. It was before he got into television, but it was this kind of like gaudy, really coke fueled, really obnoxious, yuppies, just like on steroids in terms of them feeling like they owned New York and were masters of the universe here. And I can really see this whole thing being just a spiteful stab back at all of that from his perspective. Maybe he even had I could see, like, this all makes sense if he had an agent that he couldn't stand, who was just an awful person, a posturing nightmare of a human being. And he wrote this script just like in a frenzy of just getting it off his chest. And it feels so personal. And it feels really, raw and unfocused and a little bit jumbled, and maybe not narratively, like, no finesse there.
I'd had a little to drink. I was a little drunk.
But it makes more sense as it goes.
That line, that's actually in my favorite bits of dialogue. Oh, yes. Okay, I know. I guess I was pretty horny, pretty keyed up from being with the girl right before. I was drunk too. That was it. I'd had a little drink. I was a little drunk. Plus, I was horny. That's the line. It
It's a
just
great
goes
scene.
on. It's just
It's a great scene.
it's a spectacular line. Um. What there were I agree with what you're saying about this vision he's trying to get through about New York, and I also think you touched on something where you talked about the lack of finesse, which was a little bit more of what I wanted, because I didn't get in American Psycho, we get the picture of the rest of the world that this guy fits into, and what has turned him into what he becomes. And in this movie, it's sort of just feels like a random start with this guy.
Yeah, but wouldn't you say? But I agree. But so is the metamorphosis. I mean, there's a picture of Franz Kafka on his dressing table. This is about the metamorphosis. This is like there's no explanation in the metamorphosis about why he turns into a cockroach. There's none. He just gets up, and that's his new reality. And in a similar way, I feel like this movie is just going like, no, forget the Hollywood conventions. I'm not going to explain the bat. I'm not going to explain anything. Screw this guy. He's a jerk, and only jerks would want to be vampires. And so he's a jerk, and I'm just going to show you this jerk from beginning to end, and he gets worse as it goes. And I bought it. I just totally bought it. But it's also this. I knew we were going to differ about this.
But they put him into, but then you put him in therapy with a therapist who's arguably the worst therapist ever to walk the face of the earth, breaking.
So how is that not also a skewering of New York? Like, to me, it's like a Jules Pfeiffer play.
Okay.
That's how I took it. I took it as like a deconstruction of just the worst time and person in New York that could exist, that typified New York. And I, but I think it also represents a real dividing line for you and me in terms of the kinds of movies we will accept. It really does.
Yeah.
You are simply not willing or care. Do you care to give accolades to a movie that is not within the control of its filmmakers at all times? Your measure of appreciation for a piece of art or a movie seems to be very much about how much conscious control the filmmakers are able to have over the material to deliver exactly what they want to say to the audience in exactly the way they want the audience to get it. And that I actually hold a real love of movies that are accidentally made brilliant things, that are messy, incoherent, sometimes drug-induced crazy screams into the wilderness that have a certain poetry to them, that evoke a certain truthful feeling throughout them, even if they're not made artisanally. Does that sound fair to you?
Yeah, that sounds fair. I like watching good plans well executed, even if the plan is to show crazy. I mean, there are crazy movies that I like. I mean, Little Murders is a movie that's completely nuts, and I love it. But I feel like Jules Pfeiffer and Dad and everybody involved in crafting that play and crafting that movie were in charge of their vision the whole time.
My favorite,
none of it feels accidental to me.
Another way to put it is that you like movies about crazy people made by sane people.
Yeah.
And I like movies about crazy people made by crazy people.
I'm a vampire! 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 I'm a vampire!
But and I guess part of that is that I think what you like, one of the things you like, is you like the phenomenon. like you can watch a movie that might arguably be a mess and an accident, but you love the story behind the creation of that.
I do.
And I'm not that
yeah.
interested in the story behind the creation of the piece. I want to look at the piece as it stands all on its own.
That's partly because the kinds of work you like is made by people that don't have a lot of crazy stories to tell about why they're making it. And that's true.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, there aren't a lot of, other than the scripts not being finished for Casablanca, there's no crazy stories about it. I mean, the script wasn't done. All right. Oh, so they kept going back and refining it and shooting until they got it right. But it was all made by a lot of people that knew that they were after a certain balanced, kind of beautiful Shakespearean pairing of elements that would bring about an enormous amount of emotion and feeling at the proper time in the film that they were trying to make. And
there is one aspect of that, though, that I think fed into one of the most brilliant things in that movie, is that it put Ingrid Bergman into the position of, because she didn't know who she was going to end up with at the end of the movie, because they hadn't figured it out, and they didn't figure it out until the very end, that she was stuck trying to play that role in such a way that she could go either way at the end of the movie. So she really had to be torn through the whole film. And I love that story.
right.
But
Well, so I guess
a
what
lower level of craziness.
but if you take that idea and extrapolate that so that it's a kind of a form of chaos, of controlled chaos, which is more the way that filmmakers like maybe Cassavetes worked, or filmmakers that, you know, were really popular in the New York underground scene from the late 70s and during the 80s, like Abel Ferrara or whatever. I'm not saying, I mean, I think there is a real beauty to their artistic ability. There is a beauty in that mess, but it's really kind of like, you know, screams from street level that are, you know, sometimes really effective. And I saw that in this movie. I saw this was a legitimately like handmade, iconoclastic, weird attempt at something, and that wasn't what I expected. And
not to lie right down on the therapist's couch during the show, but I think enough of my life, my actual life as a youngster, was, who's writing this script and who's making this movie? Things are going completely out of control.
right. And my childhood was totally normal.
No, yours was no. We had the same childhood, but I think our reactions to it were, you know, that you somehow feel at home in it. Like, let's embrace this craziness and make art out of it. And I'm like, no, please help me find a place where this craziness goes away. And
God, where am I?
You let the goddamn crapper alone. I'm trying to take a dump, so either shut up and leave the goddamn acting lessons for home, or go back to the ladies' room.
Oh my God.
I mean, I see, the thing is, I truly, for me, a scene like that, which I fell on the floor watching, you know, it works partly because of everything that came before it. And even if I'm going like, I don't understand the first part of this movie, while I was watching it, I was like, what movie are they trying to make? What are they trying to do? And I guess partly it comes from like editing stuff. You know, most movies are a freaking disaster when they show up at the editor's doorstep. They really are. You like to say that there's a big plan and it's all organized little Lego pieces that they've thought about and fit together in an orderly fashion. It's not true. Most of the time, even like time-honored filmmakers are just dumping off reels of footage that an editor's like, what are you talking about? How am I supposed to make this work? So in a real way, even films that feel like machine design also are kind of just chaos that you're
Oh my God.
it says boohoo in the script, and he's gonna freaking say it.
Boohoo. Yeah. Sort of like IDAO.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
They wrote it.
IDA, yo, man, they got lookers.
Yeah, they wrote it. I'm gonna say it.
Yeah. This hit me in the surreal town. This hit me in, like, I thought Buñuel could have made this movie. He should have made it. He could have done his own version of it. This should have been a remake of a Buñuel movie.
All right, there's a moment I want to talk about.
You know, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Huh? That's all you have to do.
Yeah, wow. But there's a moment. I have the utmost respect for a woman who says, I'm not going to do a nude scene. I'm not going to show my breasts in this scene." That's absolutely fine. That's great.
Yes, absolutely, 100%.
I'm not going to say, no, you got to show your breasts. I'm not,
No.
But I am going to say that if you're not going to show your breasts in the movie, can we shoot the scene in such a way that the pasties that we're putting over them are not viewed by the audience?
Apparently that was difficult for some reason. I don't know why.
And it didn't look like, oh, it was a slight mistake. It almost looked like, oh, there's some reason why this fantasy vampire character has pasties on.
I really don't know. It was very obvious, but then it's also like, that you're admitting this is also, I think part of the fact is that no one wanted to say they noticed it, because that would have been like, well, we're not paying that much attention to you. We just want to.
It's not like you had to go looking for it. It's not like you had to be careful.
No.
It's not like a momentary glimpse.
I believe that it was darker on set, and the color timings and
Yeah.
it just difficult. I mean,
Okay.
Stefan Chopsky is a great DP. It's not like
I don't think it's the DP's fault. I think it's
yeah. I mean, whose fault is it going to be?
It's the fault of everybody on set who's looking at them saying, we can clearly see that you have things pasted.
There probably isn't a video village in '88, so there isn't really a lot of people looking at that through. I mean, there's a terrible video feed, which it was probably impossible to see that clearly, and then it was up to Stefan Chopsky, who I think was operating. It certainly looks like he operates because he's holding a camera in his picture. But Stefan Chopsky, he did Edward Scissorhands and, The Thin Blue Line and Ed Wood and
And our producer,
Batman Returns.
Cassie Lemmons, plays the nudity completely naturally and without embarrassment. She made the choice to not have a problem with the nudity. Either are valid.
But I mean, Jennifer Beals had already she'd paid at the office. She'd already done Flashdance, and she paid at the office already. I mean, we could say a lot of things about the pasties, but I will say that for me,
our producer pointing out, wear a bra.
Okay, sure. I'm not arguing any of it with anybody.
I'm not arguing that with you.
But I will fight to the death over whose fault it is, and it is Stefan Chopsky's fault in 1988 that you see that. There's nobody else.
Did you get that joke?
No.
Guaranteed. So
our producer is pointing out that maybe she was wearing pasties with the dress she had on, which is a fashion thing that happens with certain dresses, which I would agree with, but not if you're an imaginary vampire. I don't think imaginary vampires wear them under their dresses.
Yes, that's true.
I think real women in real life sometimes wear them under dresses at the Oscars and things like that. But
it was noticeable. I didn't want to say that I noticed it, but I did.
This is a question for the ages. Alexis is asking, why do imaginary vampires wear underwear?
This is a very good point.
Sounds like the beginning of a good joke, actually.
And I want to say one last thing big thing that I think makes the movie great for me. Great.
Okay.
Is that they decided to go the Max Schreck Nosferatu direction with this vampire character, and we're bringing back that kind of really diseased, very disturbing, not sexy, vampire, which we'd had a lot of in the 80s with the Anne Rice movies and the kind of like sexy rock and roll vampires that started then. And I mean, there was Fright Night and Lost Boys, but they were also kind of sexy vampires.
Oh yeah.
This was just this vision of a vampire that Nick Cage had and then made good on, I think, in his performance. There's physicality and what he was referencing with his work in the second half of the movie. Was a really daring approach for it. And more than so funny.
Oh my God.
So
should we bring our producers on? They have.
I would like
strong
to hear what they have to
about
say and see where we fall on their scale of did we get it or not.
Yes. There's Alexis.
Hello, Alexis.
Hello.
Sophia.
Sophia, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So,
Have you been listening to what we've been saying?
Yes.
All right. So
Yes.
I would personally really like to know your thoughts and your feelings about how we're doing. How we're doing here today.
First of all, I'm loving this discussion. I find it really fascinating because this movie is so polarizing. Like, first, when it came out, it totally tanked. The budget was $2 million and they ended up making like $700,000 from it. And actually the producer, Barbara Zitwer, would stand at the different theaters where it was screening and hand out plastic vampire teeth.
No.
To get people to come in. Yes.
She was like pulling a William Castle out in front of the theater.
Oh yeah. That's how badly it bombed. And even then you had critics on both sides saying, this is the worst movie ever made. And this is the most genius movie ever made.
Okay.
And speaking about Nick Cage's performance too,
Mm-hmm.
he is awful and he's brilliant.
Mm-hmm.
I personally really, really love this movie.
Okay.
It's one of my top 5 favorites.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
She has a poster of it, a giant poster of it. She dove into a bunch of research for every day would just be vampires.
I feel you on that. I really do, because I had to warm up to it. I didn't get what was going on for a while. Like, it really took me about 45 minutes before I felt like I could go, oh, okay, I'm in love. Now I'm in love with this thing. Like, I'm really in love. But I think that's also part of what's great about it, is that it is not an easy movie to crack. You don't really know how funny / serious it is, what its themes are really trying to do. So it keeps you kind of off kilter in a great way that I just found really unusual. I'm glad you like it. Sophia, do you like it also?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Definitely.
Wow. All right. I'm going to leave. You guys have a great show. In the next week, tune in for the Arkin
You've always
Brothers.
been telling me when our time is up, and I just wonder if maybe, does it make you feel a little insecure when I say?
Yeah, next week everybody can tune in for the Arkin brother talks about movies.
Oh, now come on. You need to fight for your opinions, man.
I also understand where you're coming from, Matthew, though. It is kind of interesting how it's so abrupt in the beginning. It just throws you straight into it with not much understanding of who he is. But then again, kind of like what Tony was saying, that's almost part of the genius of it, is that we're just watching his story. This is his story. You can make no mistake. It's sorry, I'm rambling. I'm trying to organize myself. You guys were saying everything very well.
Well, also like the pathos of it throughout the whole thing is that like, you know, we really feel for this guy, and at times we don't. Like I find it so fascinating how he's a completely unreliable narrator. We're seeing this movie from his perspective, and then when we're not, like when we're seeing it from Alva's perspective, it's an entirely different movie. And so that's what I was thinking a little bit, where like some people are in a different movie and in his own thing.
Yeah.
Too late! Too late! Too late! Too late!
Yeah.
There's things about it that reminded me of it was kind of like a male version of Repulsion in certain respects, as just basically a document of a person going mad day by day. They're this could be actually a very realistic documentary of his interior life.
Yeah,
in
like
a weird way.
Definitely, there's a moment where I think he says, it's like I'm talking to a wall. And he says that to Alva, and it's like, it's perfect because it completely like brings that in. Yeah.
And at the end, he is talking to a wall.
Yeah, and then he's talking to a wall.
Yeah.
It could be it could be so many things. I think that's an interesting part of it, is that it really depends on the viewer. It could be an allegory for mental illness. It could be just a story about a guy who actually turns into a vampire. Like it can.
I thought it was a great allegory for like the cocaine scene in New York in the 80s. Like it seemed like a great allegory for somebody going off the rails with drugs too.
Yes, and also the writer, when he was writing the screenplay, he had been in this really toxic relationship with the producer, and so like, of course, she was furious when he had finished the script and gave it to her, because she felt like, this is just me, this is us. And yeah, like also with the coke scene and stuff, he references mescaline at one point. Yeah, and so it's like it brings in all of these elements, which I think at its core is centered around just like being alone and very lonely in New York.
Yeah. And really living a lot. I mean, I think, to take it maybe a notch too deep, but maybe it's there. This character himself is a fabrication. He doesn't really have an identity. He's clearly using a fake accent. The character, not Nick Cage. I think the character is actually putting on this accent to appear posh, right?
Yeah.
He's not from New York. He's only been there 10 years. He's from a non-distinct place. He's created this whole persona, and it's almost like that's what starts to unravel. You know, once you start creating that fake persona, what's to stop you from creating the next one, which would be completely horrible.
Like Talented Mr. Ripley a little bit. And he's from Philadelphia. So
right,
it's like, still, where would that accent? And by the way, Nicolas Cage based that accent off of his father, who was a literary professor. And so he really dove into it in almost a parody, but like you're saying, like he's fake.
And willing to only do it so well, though. That's the thing, where Cage probably could do a better accent than that, decided to only do half a good job. So his terrible like surfer lingo, like his horrible surfer voice, comes through as well without any control. And that's either a terrible performance or one that's so ahead of the curve people weren't ready for it. Like
I think I would have gone along for a lot more of the ride if and I mentioned this earlier, if I felt like he was surrounded by something that anchored us somewhere. You know, all of this stuff that you guys are talking about, his character deconstructing throughout the course of the movie, if they had given him a real therapist from which I could have witnessed that and gotten some indication that that's what was happening, then I would have gone along on that ride and liked watching it. But when you make the entire world completely, I didn't feel like I had a vantage point from which to see that.
Because yes, I guess, because to accept it is to accept that the world is mad, and so wanting sense out of it would be a fool's errand. Like, it's a world wherein you're not going to get a good therapist. Like, that's not going to happen. You want one, you wish one came in to make sense of it, but in fact you get a terrible therapist who is...
This is my kingdom, and my palace is but 2 blocks from here. Be off! God damn it!
I have a thought on that.
But if the whole world is if you're just showing me a whole world that's completely random and really crazy, and there's nobody in there that has any center at all, then I don't know where to watch that craziness from, I guess is what I'm saying.
Okay, well, that's a valid point, but I don't. To me, that's not where I watch it from. Is not the I'll accept wherever the director is watching it from.
No, but if you're looking at like saying something like Catch-22, right, which is saying that the entire world is crazy, right? We have Yossarian to orient us where we're supposed to watch the craziness from.
Right, but in this, my point is that the unmooring quality of this post-modernist approach to it is that there isn't that thing to hold on to. It is what it's trying to convey. It gives you the experience of the thing it's trying to say rather than give you a story about it. And I don't think it's fair to criticize it for being what it is as a postmodernist piece of work. To ask it to give you certain feelings is actually would make it not that thing anymore and take away the thing that I like most about it in a way, which is a complete immersion into his insanity. I don't need a reference point. I'm curious about what it feels like to be in the head of somebody who goes that crazy. For them, there is no sense of reality. So why should I, as an audience, have it for those 2 hours? I guess.
There you are.
I think to the point of whether that's an enjoyable experience or not is a very interesting question, because I found this at first unnerving and then really enjoyable, whereas it seemed like you just the real enjoyment of it was not ever for you on the menu.
No, I really enjoyed watching it because I thought it was completely nuts and crazy, but I didn't buy what it was selling as. I don't quite know how to put it into words, and yet that's my job. I guess I like to know where to watch it from. I don't need to see just random craziness.
You don't need to see random craziness.
Well,
I get it.
I do need to see. I do need to see Amy Stiller and David Hyde Pierce as mimes fighting on the street. However, right?
Was that the two of them? I didn't get that deep.
Yeah, that's. I believe that's Amy Stiller and David Hyde Pierce.
Incredible.
Oh my goodness. Oh, and by the way, John Michael Higgins makes a cameo in the bar scene. I think it's the second bar scene. But I think that, at least for me, I really enjoyed just like being in that mindset and kind of feeling like I can't trust anything in this movie because he's behaving the same way. I think that's definitely how he feels. He's so self-loathing and narcissistic. And even with like you can't trust anything and it's just so crazy. I think the opening of like the Gothic architecture in New York like perfectly illustrates that, where you have a plain black box building, right? And then you have like this strange Gothic tower next to it.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
told that we have a clip of Simon Helberg doing an impression of Nick Cage in this film. I think I might love to see that.
He's like, you have to put it in the right file, according to alphabetical order. A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P, Q, R, S, T, U, V, W, X, Y, Z. Oh!
That's a pretty good impression.
it is. It is. That's pretty
pretty
great.
great.
I mean, it's weird. Like, I can totally see why this turns people off too. I get it. I really do. It's hard. I mean, it's a hard movie to try to parse in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and
And Nick Cage can really turn people off, and really can turn other actors off who are really trying to spend their entire life getting to specific truthfulness. It's the other direction completely. So it's a little.
All right. Well, so I lost the show this week. I can accept that.
But I say this all completely. Thank you, Alexis and Sophia,
Oh, they went
for
away.
your input.
They went away.
Particularly thank you for my perspective as you came to bat for me and made me feel great. So thanks.
Yeah, fine. Thank you guys. Thanks so much.
I thought that I could feel the way you felt for about 40 minutes.
Okay.
And now I might get the poster for the movie.
Double feature?
That's a really good question. Double bill. We'd already brought up American Psycho, and that would be too much because it's like that's just the same movie over again in a way. I think that would be too similar. I'm going to go for Possession. Andrei Zulawski's 1990 psychopathically terrifying horror movie starring Isabella Gianni, who also goes crazy in a different way, and it may be in her mind or not. We don't really know.
Okay, good. I like that.
What about you?
1993's Falling Down.
Oh, that's good. Right.
Or possibly The Swimmer.
The Swimmer. That's a great one. I like that. So The Swimmer's great.
That'd be fun.
Somebody who makes up their own reality.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What's a day? What's a sky? I think I'll go for a swim.
Tell me about the tell me about the birds. Tell me about the chicken sandwich.
Yeah. How would you watch this movie?
I think the ideal viewing, clearly nursing a hangover on a weekday, playing hooky from work.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Mine was to have it playing in the background on a loop on all of the giant screen TVs in a friend's sports bar, playing an all-night poker game after hours. So that you're hanging out with your friends playing poker, the bar's closed down, but each of you has a view so that you can stop in the middle of the hand and go, oh, watch this. Watch what he does here.
That's perfect. That's absolutely perfect. Love it.
Who am I? Who are you?
I don't know. Really, this was hard. I really just kind of put us in the boardroom. I thought we were just two of those guys in the boardroom.
Oh, this was easy for me. You were the cab driver who talks about his wife and how wonderful she is. And I did a little gender bending. I'm the old lady in the ladies' room.
So funny, man. That moment was great.
Right? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
And recasting.
Recasting.
I really worked on this.
Yeah, I thought a lot about it. I'm curious where you went with it because I only did him. I only got as far as him. But where did you go?
Well, I went in the direction of trying to make it into the movie that I wanted to see. If we were gonna, because at first I actually thought I was watching a vampire movie. And then where it lost me was when I found out it was about a guy going crazy. And then I said, okay, well, if I was going to try and make that movie about the guy who's losing it in New York, who would I want to see in it? And I cast Penn Badgley, who I don't know if you ever saw a show called You. where he plays a stalker. Robin Weigert as the Shrink.
Don't know any of these people. Now who feels silly?
Aaliyah Shawkat as Alma.
Okay.
Aaliyah Shawkat is on The Old Man, the series. And Abigail Spencer as the fantasy vampire who could destroy your life. Yes, there you go.
Other than Abigail Spencer, I don't know any of the people that you were talking about, but they sound great.
You'll know Robin Weigert if you look at her.
Let me look that up then.
Robin Weigert, she played the Shrink in the show Big Little Lies. She played Nicole Kidman's Shrink in Big Little Lies. She's wonderful.
Yeah, okay, I've seen her. Yeah, she's very good.
Yeah.
So you're going for a TV show vibe. That's
well, these are all good actors.
I get you.
In spite of the fact of being on television.
I'm not saying that. I'm saying you're going for like you're going to want to make this into a series vibe, into a streaming kind of vibe, which I think would be an interesting dive,
Yeah. But and you
oh man, I thought a lot about it, and at the end of the day, I think the most interesting thing to see would have been to do a recast, but the same year, and do a movie in tandem with the same script, and recast another scenery chewing actor from the time and see who won. And so my choice is Gary Oldman.
Oh, wow. Who had already played a vampire?
Not yet. Not at this
point.
Not
yet. Oh, he hadn't yet. Okay.
Because I think that it would be interesting to see, because I think he might be in the straight ahead version of the movie that might more appeal to you, that was more considered from a dramaturgical standpoint. Maybe he would probably fill it with a lot more extreme yet connected character traits.
Yes.
Or moments.
Yeah.
And it would be interesting to see an actor who was that crazy and that big, with a completely different set of skills and background, try that and see what would happen. That's where I went with it.
All right. Well, I think we've done it. I think we have done The Vampire's Kiss.
You're never going to talk to me again. Is that
I'm
what's happening?
I talk to you all the time.
I
did make up a drink called The Vampire's Kiss for the show.
What's
but
that?
Since we're pre-recording this in the morning, I decided
you're not drinking it.
Actually have it.
Have you ever had one?
No, but I am going to make it. It is it's 2 ounces of batch 22. It's a martini, served in a martini glass. 2 ounces of batch 22, 1 ounce of Sangue Morlacco, which is a liqueur made by Luxardo, and Sangue Morlacco. Sangue means blood.
Ooh.
And then there's a vodka called Vampire Vodka, 1 ounce of Vampire Vodka. So 2 ounces batch 22, 1 ounce Sangue Morlacco, 1 ounce Vampire Vodka, shaken over ice, strained into a martini glass with an Amarena Fabre cherry.
Oh, that's great.
The work's not just gonna go away, Alva. It never just goes away.
Yeah. So, and neither does this show, because we are going to be back next week with how many meters down? 47 meters down.
That's many meters.
That's more meters down than I have ever been.
You haven't even shaken a stick at that many meters.
I have been I've been 40 meters down.
That's right. You're a diver, so you will get something out of this movie.
I was down to 120 feet, which I believe is 40 meters.
I just know that is 2 hours, but I that's because I watch too many movies.
Oh, there you go. Okay. So please tune in next week for 47 meters down. And do we have to ask our producers, do we have a special guest on that show?
I'm a vampire! I'm a vampire!
We may have the director and writer joining us next week for 47 meters down. So,
all right, that would be exciting.
We hope you're there too.
I hope I'm there. I hope I'm here.
You'll be there.
I'm a vampire. Kill me. Kill me.
Oh my God. Good night, everybody.
Talking about cocktails that are stylish, movies great or phony, and how Tony should win a Matthew, and Matthew should win a Tony. But in the meantime, talking about film in the meantime, the Arkin brothers talk